They called him a slave, a number, property. But in 1791, he led the only successful slave revolution in history. Against the most powerful army on earth, he never lost a major battle. His name struck fear into emperors and kings. This is the story of how the impossible became inevitable. History has a way of forgetting the stories that make empires uncomfortable. The stories that challenge everything we've been taught about power, about who gets to be free, and about what's possible when ordinary people decide they've had enough. This is one of those stories, and if you've never heard it before, that's not an accident. If this story moves you, if it challenges what you thought you knew about history, hit that subscribe button right now. Because stories like this, stories they didn't teach us in school, these are the ones that need to be told. Let's dive in. The year is 1743, somewhere on the coast of West Africa. A boy is born who will one day bring the most powerful empire on earth to its knees. But right now, he's just a child. And like millions of others, his destiny is being written by men who see him as cargo, not human. He's taken, chained, and shipped across an ocean to a place that will become the richest colony in the world. A place built entirely on blood and sugar. A place called Saint-Domingue. We know him as Toussaint. And his story begins not with glory, but with chains. By the 1780s, Saint-Domingue is a nightmare dressed up as paradise. It's the jewel of the French Empire, producing more wealth than any colony on earth. Half the sugar and coffee consumed in Europe comes from this single island. But that wealth has a price. 500,000 enslaved Africans work themselves to death on plantations owned by 40,000 French colonists. The average life expectancy for a slave on a sugar plantation is 7 years. 7 years of hell before your body gives out. Toussaint is different, though. Not because he's treated better, slavery is slavery, but because he's lucky enough to avoid the worst of it. He's a coachman, not a field slave. He drives his master's carriage, which means he sees things, he hears things, he learns things, and most importantly, he teaches himself to read. Think about that for a moment. Here's a man who, according to the law, is property. He's not supposed to have thoughts of his own, let alone educate himself. But Toussaint reads everything he can get his hands on. Military strategy, philosophy, history. He reads about Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great. He studies their tactics, their mistakes, their victories. He's building a library in his mind, preparing for a war he doesn't even know is coming yet. But the signs are everywhere. Across the ocean in France, revolution is brewing. It's 1789, and the French people are overthrowing their king. They're talking about liberty, equality, and brotherhood. The Declaration of the Rights of Man is being shouted in the streets of Paris. Every man is born free and equal, they say. Every man has the right to freedom, except, apparently, if you're black. Except if you're in the colonies. The French revolutionaries want freedom for themselves, but profits from slavery. They want to eat their cake made from slave-grown sugar and call themselves champions of human rights at the same time. The enslaved people of Saint-Domingue hear these words, and they understand the hypocrisy perfectly. If all men are created equal, then why are we in chains? If liberty is a human right, then why doesn't it cross the ocean? The questions start quietly, whispered in the fields and in the night. But questions have a way of becoming demands, and demands have a way of becoming action. August 14th, 1791. Deep in the northern mountains of Saint-Domingue, in a place called Bois Caïman, something extraordinary happens. Enslaved people from plantations all across the region gather in secret. They perform a Vodou ceremony, calling on their ancestors, calling on their gods, calling on something deeper than fear. A woman named Cécile Fatiman presides. A man named Dutty Boukman speaks. And they make a pact. 1 week from tonight, they rise. August 21st, 1791. The night the world changes. Across the northern province, plantations burst into flames. Enslaved people who were property in the morning are soldiers by midnight. They burn the fields they were forced to work. They destroy the tools of their oppression. They take up whatever weapons they can find, machetes, axes, sticks, rocks, and they fight. The French colonists are shocked. How dare these slaves rebel? How dare they believe they deserve freedom? The colonial army mobilizes, confident they'll crush this uprising in days. After all, these are just slaves, uneducated, untrained, disorganized. They have no idea what's coming. Toussaint is 48 years old when he joins the rebellion. That's ancient by the standards of the time, especially for an enslaved person. Most men would be thinking about survival, not revolution. But Toussaint isn't most men. He's been preparing for this his entire life, even if he didn't know it. The early days of the rebellion are chaos. Thousands of formerly enslaved people are fighting, but they're not an army. Not yet. They're angry. They're brave. But they don't have structure. They don't have strategy. They're winning through sheer numbers and righteous fury, but that won't be enough. Not against trained European soldiers. Not against empires. That's where Toussaint comes in. He doesn't just join the fight, he transforms it. He takes men who've never held a gun and turns them into soldiers. He takes rage and channels it into discipline. He takes chaos and builds an army. And he's brilliant at it. Everything he read, everything he studied, every military campaign he memorized, it all comes flooding back. He uses the terrain to his advantage, drawing French troops into the mountains where their formations break down. He strikes fast and disappears before they can regroup. He cuts supply lines. He wins small victories that add up to something bigger. He doesn't just fight, he thinks. And that makes all the difference. But here's where Toussaint shows he's not just a military genius, he's a political one too. Because this isn't just a war between slaves and masters. This is a war between empires. France is fighting to keep its colony. Spain, which controls the other half of the island, sees an opportunity to expand. Britain smells weakness and wants the whole thing for itself. 3 European powers are circling like sharks, and Toussaint realizes something crucial. He can play them against each other. In 1793, he makes a deal with Spain. He'll fight for them against the French in exchange for freedom for his people. It's a calculated risk, and it works. With Spanish support, Toussaint's army grows stronger. He wins battle after battle against the French colonial forces. His reputation spreads. Plantation owners flee. French soldiers whisper his name in fear. But then, something changes. The French Revolution, in a moment of genuine idealism, abolishes slavery throughout all French territories. February 4th, 1794. On paper, at least, every enslaved person in every French colony is now free. It's a political move, sure. They need soldiers to fight Britain and Spain. But it's also exactly what Toussaint has been fighting for. So he does something unexpected. He switches sides. He goes back to fighting for France, but not as a slave, as an equal, as a general. And he brings his army with him. The Spanish betrayed the revolution anyway, so Toussaint has no loyalty to them. France, at least, has officially ended slavery. Whether they mean it or not, Toussaint is going to hold them to that promise. Now comes the real test. Britain wants Saint-Domingue. They see the chaos and think it's their chance to steal the richest colony in the world. In 1793, they invade with 60,000 troops. 60,000 professional soldiers, the finest army in the world at that time, backed by the most powerful navy on earth. They're so confident, they've already printed British currency with Saint-Domingue on it. Toussaint faces them with an army of former slaves. On paper, it's not even a contest. Britain should win easily. But wars aren't fought on paper. Toussaint knows his enemy's weakness. They're not prepared for this land. The heat, the mountains, the diseases they've never encountered. So he uses everything. He uses guerrilla tactics, hitting British forces when they're vulnerable and vanishing before they can respond. He destroys bridges so they can't move their heavy artillery. He poisons wells along their routes. And most effectively, he just waits. Because yellow fever and malaria do more damage to the British than bullets ever could. For 5 years, Britain throws everything at Saint-Domingue. They send more troops, more money, more resources. They lose 45,000 soldiers to death and disease. It's the most expensive military campaign in British history up to that point. And in 1798, they give up. They withdraw. The most powerful military force in the world just lost to an army of former slaves. Think about that. An army that didn't exist 7 years earlier just defeated the British Empire. By 1801, Toussaint controls the entire island. The French are technically still in charge, but everyone knows the truth. Toussaint is the real power. He's governor in all but name. He's freed every slave, reorganized the economy, and brought stability. And he's done it while fighting off 3 European powers. He's accomplished the impossible. But he's not done yet. In 1801, Toussaint does something audacious. He writes a constitution for Saint-Domingue, not as a French colony, but as an autonomous territory. He declares himself governor for life. He enshrines the permanent abolition of slavery. He opens trade with whoever he wants. He's basically declaring independence without actually using the word. And he sends this constitution to France, not asking for permission, informing them. This is how things are now. Across the ocean, there's a man who does not take this well. His name is Napoleon Bonaparte, and he's just become the most powerful person in Europe. He's conquered nations, crowned himself ruler of France, and he's not about to let a former slave tell him what to do. Napoleon looks at Saint-Domingue and sees lost profits, lost prestige, a dangerous example spreading to other colonies. If enslaved people in Haiti can free themselves, what's stopping enslaved people everywhere else? This cannot stand. Toussaint must be crushed, and slavery must be restored. So Napoleon does what empires do. He sends an army. But not just any army. He sends 40,000 veteran soldiers, led by his own brother-in-law, General Charles Leclerc. These are troops who fought across Europe, who've never known defeat. They're bringing ships, artillery, everything Napoleon can spare. It's the largest military expedition France has ever sent across the Atlantic. The message is clear: submit or be destroyed. Toussaint prepares for war. He knows he can win. He's done it before. But Leclerc doesn't fight fair. He sends messages promising peace, promising Toussaint can keep his position, promising nothing will change. It's all lies, but they're convincing lies. Some of Toussaint's generals believe them. They lay down their weapons. The French gain ground through deception, not battle. Toussaint is too smart to fall for it completely, but he's also tired. 11 years of constant war. He's in his 50s now, ancient for this life, and he genuinely believes that maybe, just maybe, France will honor the abolition of slavery. Maybe they can find peace. So when Leclerc invites him to negotiate, Toussaint goes. It's the biggest mistake of his life. June 7th, 1802. Toussaint arrives at a meeting with French officers. They talk pleasantly. They discuss terms. And then the trap springs. Soldiers surround him. Chains come out. Toussaint, the man who freed himself and hundreds of thousands of others, is a prisoner again. They ship him back to France in the hold of a warship. The same ocean he crossed in chains as a young boy, he crosses in chains as an old man. But this time, he knows what he's accomplished. This time, he knows he's changed the world. Napoleon imprisons him in a fortress in the French Alps. The Fort de Joux, a cold, dark prison cut into the mountains. It's the opposite of the Caribbean. Freezing, isolated, designed to break men's spirits. They want Toussaint to reveal where he hid his gold, where his weapons are stored. They want him to betray his people one last time. He tells them nothing. Even in chains, even dying, Toussaint defies them. On April 7th, 1803, they find him dead in his cell. Officially, it's pneumonia. Unofficially, it's murder by neglect. They took a man born in the tropics and froze him to death in the Alps. But before he dies, Toussaint writes something that will echo through history. In overthrowing me, you have cut down in Saint-Domingue only the trunk of the tree of liberty. It will spring up again by the roots, for they are numerous and deep. He's right. Because back in Haiti, his generals haven't surrendered. Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Henri Christophe, Alexandre Pétion, they're still fighting. And now they're angry. They know France can't be trusted. They know there can be no peace with slavery. So they fight harder. They fight smarter. And slowly, impossibly, they start winning. The French soldiers, weakened by disease and constant ambushes, begin to crumble. Napoleon sends more troops, but yellow fever kills them faster than bullets. France is pouring men and money into a war they can't win. By late 1803, the French are broken. Dessalines leads a final offensive that shatters what's left of Leclerc's army. On January 1st, 1804, Haiti declares independence. Not as a French colony, not as a territory, as a nation. The first black republic in the world, the only successful slave revolution in human history. Toussaint never lived to see it. But without him, it never would have happened. He laid the foundation. He proved it was possible. He built the army and trained the generals who finished what he started. The tree fell, but the roots ran deep. The world doesn't know what to do with Haiti, a nation of formerly enslaved people who defeated 3 European empires. It's every slave owner's nightmare come to life. In the American South, plantation owners wake up in cold sweats. What if their slaves hear about this? What if they get ideas? So they do what empires always do when they can't control something? They try to erase it. They refuse to recognize Haiti as a nation. They blockade its ports. And most cruelly, in 1825, France forces Haiti to pay reparations. Not for France's crimes, but for Haiti's freedom. Haiti must pay France for the lost property, meaning themselves. 150 million francs. It takes Haiti 122 years to pay it off. 122 years of debt for the crime of being free. This is why Haiti is poor today. Not because of anything Haitians did wrong, but because the world punished them for daring to be free. But here's what they couldn't take away: the example. Latin American revolutionaries like Simón Bolívar found refuge in Haiti. The idea spread. If enslaved people in Haiti could defeat Napoleon, what else was possible? The Americas would never be the same. And yet, for centuries, this story was buried. Western textbooks barely mention it. When they do, it's a footnote, not the earthquake it actually was. Why? Because it's a dangerous story. It tells people that empires can fall, that the powerless can become powerful, that no chain is unbreakable. Those are lessons that make rulers nervous. But you can't kill a true story. It survives in the blood and memory of the people who lived it. And eventually, it comes back. Toussaint Louverture died in a frozen prison cell, but his legacy is eternal. He proved that a man born into slavery could outthink, outfight, and outlast the greatest military minds of his age. He proved that freedom isn't given, it's taken. He proved that with strategy, courage, and an unshakable belief in human dignity, the impossible becomes inevitable. They tried to bury him. They tried to erase his name from history. They tried to make sure future generations would never know what he accomplished. But here we are, more than 200 years later, and we're still telling his story. Because some truths are too powerful to stay buried. The lesson isn't just about the past. It's about now. It's about every person who's ever been told they don't matter, that they can't change anything, that the system is too big and they're too small. Toussaint was a slave who became a general who defeated empires. If that's not proof that ordinary people can reshape the world, nothing is. This is the history they don't teach. These are the heroes they don't celebrate. But now, you know. Share this video. Make sure this story reaches someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel because we're uncovering more untold histories like this every week. Drop a comment and tell me, what other forgotten heroes should we explore next? And remember, history isn't just about the past. It's about understanding who we are and what we're capable of. Never forget, the impossible is just the possible that hasn't happened yet.